Good evening. My name is Yao, Master Yao, and I'm joined tonight by JR, Junior Walker, and we're continuing the conversation about royalty and alchemy. This is episode 3. One of the things I talked about last time was, some of the secrets of people trying to return to the vibration of royalty, to that feeling, to reconnect to it again. I spoke about the fact that some people, that search led them to having a past life regression. And so that they can kind of understand a little bit better why they're searching for certain things in this lifetime. And that no matter what age that you're in, no matter what time it is, whether it's the 1400s, 1700s, modern times, that um, some of the ways that people are seeking and searching, and some of their lifestyles remain the same. So I'm going to start out by just talking about the fact that one of the most powerful therapies that I used to do when I did life coaching was past life regressions. They really opened up a lot of things for me so that I could make that connection better. So uh, I just want to talk about that as an opener to lead into how people in modern times who don't really know that they used to have a connection to royalty, how that plays out. So I'm just going to start out, JR, with just throwing it out there. Do you know people who have had the regressions, and what's been their experience?
Well, thank you, Mastiel, for having me on this journey, first and foremost. And yes, I do. I know about two other people that had done a past life regression besides myself. Um, One of the things that I've noticed about a particular girl, she's from like London, that actually put me on to past life regression. She found out that she was actually enslaved, actually the quite opposite of royalty, um, when she did the past life regression in one of her most recent lives, and she forced her will to come back to this particular timeline that we're existing on currently on earth to have a better life, because she kind of felt within her will, in her feelings before she died, that like, man, if I just had one more shot at becoming human and having a more positive experience, I would do right this time. And actually she became like kind of like famous on YouTube. So it kind of gave her a shot at doing just that. And what I would say that one of her experiences, because she opened up to me the most, was that when she did the past life regression, she was crying. It was almost like it was real to her to relive those memories.
Yeah, it's felt real to me as well. It didn't feel like, I was awake when it happened, and then you go deep into trance. But when it started, I was awake. But it really made you feel some of the feelings you were having then, and it almost felt like it wasn't you. um, so I think that experience, when a person has that, it really um, brings home the fact um, that a lot of times what happened to us in the past was not what we might have expected. Um, if there was a connection to royalty in the past and it was broken, and in the case with this young lady, it was broken. You yearn to get back to it. You know, if you've ever been in that vibration, you want to get back to that vibration again. Um, what I noticed was, and I said it in the last episode, was that people have a tendency to want to separate themselves from common people. And people have the tendency to want to do things that are not mediocre. In other words, they want to be set apart. They want to embrace things that are uplifting and that give them a good reputation. So if I look at some of the things that some of the people that have come to Grand Trine do, a lot of them want to do something where they are seen as leaders. Um, and I think a lot of people in Grand Trine have this thing that they don't want to be followers. They resist remaining as a student. They don't want to see themselves as a student forever. They want to see themselves as a leader. Um, have you noticed this trend in your male friends? First, let's start with the males first, and we'll go to the females.
Yes, definitely. I've noticed that everyone that I'm very close to in regards to work with the Grand Trine, we all have one thing in common, and that's just to be better than what options were given to us. You know, a lot of people they're not well, I would say that from my personal observation that they're not uh, focused in terms of the awareness that a lot of the things that they're operating from, the programs that they're operating from, either with whether it's social engineered or from like just brought through with epigenetics, is that they just eat whatever is given to them. They get on a platter, like, hey, believe this, do this. This is the labels, and there's a lot of gaps in between of trying to figure out things yourself versus this is what you deem something to be because someone told you that's what it was. And I've noticed that the guys that I kind of gravitate towards you and grad trying, or a lot of guys just in general that manifest themselves in the foundation, is that they're like, no. There's a third option. There's what you're telling me, what's good for me, what's not good for me, and then what's actually good for me. And that hidden option is what I'm looking for. Because normally the options that people kind of tell you in this society, it's for their benefit or not for their benefit, and then the secret option is for you. And that's definitely what the route that a lot of the guys take to end up in Grand Tron in the first place.
So in this society, it tends to try to condition females to want to be desirable. I mean, men have the same trait, and I think that the people who who believe that they were connected to royalty feel that they don't necessarily want to go through a lot of trouble to be popular, but at the same time, they want to do something that sets themselves apart. Um, I find that women want to do the same thing. They want to be set apart. They want to be seen as being different, unique. And it may take a different path than the men, but they also want to be uncommon. And they want to be set apart. I know it's very easy if you believe that you're cute, if you believe that you're attractive, to want to be set apart that way. But what other ways would you say women um, go to or look to try to set themselves apart and be uncommon in society?
Mm. Well, when we talk about royalty, one of the greatest ways that that you can exude royalty is a certain freedom of expression. And then I've noticed that um, we adhere to trying to get luxury brands, trying to acquire materials, but then later on, from my understanding and exploration, I found that a lot of the brands like Polo or Louis Vuitton or Gucci, these brands and their signature design pattern, it comes from a lot of African tribes. And really, the reason why we're so attached to the geometry or the just the essence of these brands is because they use a lot of African wisdom through their expression of their art and brand. And subconsciously, we want to get back to that, and that's why a lot of people even gravitate towards any of these brands in the first place, because the pattern and geometric shapes, they're coming from different African tribes that house that uh, particular set of style from these different tribes in Africa. And definitely it's through expression. A lot of women, they want to, if they feel bold enough, they're going to be the ones to set a trend, and then everyone follows after, right? That's kind of the model that I'm starting to see right now.
So, I mean, we see a lot of celebrities once they become famous for sports or they're movie stars or they're singers or whatever. One of the things that's very popular to do is to start your own line of clothing or perfume or cologne or tennis shoes or things like that. And what's really, really important about it is to have a unique signature, a unique sigil, a unique seal, so that your brand is distinguished. Brand is really important. Um, do you think that that's one of the things that connects people to celebrity on the one hand, or does it connect them to royalty?
I think the brand connects you to royalty, uh, and I would say that more than anything, because if I look at any of the most powerful conglomerates, business wise, it's all leading by last name and a sigil, some type of sigil, some type of pattern or like symbol, and a last name. And you can trace both of those two things back to royalty, almost in any type of circumstance, whether it be in this life or a past life.
It's almost like um, instead of the old style nobility, where it was connected to land and connected to the family house and things of that nature, which is also indirectly connected to the people who have political stations, so to speak. But now it's like that sort of being replaced slowly with a commercial corporate type of a brand and sigil. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. It's becoming more metaphysical.
So, in one of the recordings that we did in the last few weeks, we talked about leather and how in some parts of Europe, leather was a very was connected to royalty. In other words, there's like two types of leather. There's leather that's produced because you're going to kill the cows, the cattle, or meat. And so meat is the primary thing that you're looking for. You're looking for the quality of the meat. And the leather is secondary. But then there are some farms that they raise the cattle specifically for the quality of the leather. And the meat is secondary if they're concerned about it at all. So the cost of the leather is very, very different. And it's used in a lot of shoes and belts and and even it's not just cattle. I mean, in different countries around the world, they use the hides of different kinds of creatures, even alligators. Um, it's like, so, whole concept of something unique. We want the leather that's made for being used for shoes or armor or these types of things. And therefore, it's like the people who considered themselves noble, they would not, they don't want to use, don't want to be associated with leather that's coming from uh, people who are just using common leather. They want the special leather. And we see the same thing in with cigars. We see that, around the world, people want a certain type of tobacco in their cigars that's, grown in a special way, and that it sets itself apart uh, in terms of its pedigree. Um, and now I think also it's really getting there in terms of cars that, of course, we have the Rolls Royce, which um, is very much a brand, a sigil that's associated with royalty or nobility. It doesn't come out and say it in such words, but definitely that's where they're heading with that. Um, uh, do you have any other examples of things that we do in daily life to intentionally seek to connect us to like a form of nobility in the absence of monarchy?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is tattoos.
Really?
Yeah. And not in every society, but definitely I would believe in Polynesian in terms of, and also like Hawaiian, if I'm not mistaken, is that the Hawaiian culture is that you have tattoos, it's a form of status, you know, and also jewelry. We see this time and time again, people buying like Rolexes, certain type of watches that are hard to make, and um, certain golds and certain precious metals and diamonds. Just having those. But what else? What else can I say? Certain hairstyle. Mm,
Yeah, and especially in Africa and Asia, hairstyles were connected to royalty. And in fact, in Asia, especially in China, you know, certain colors and certain fabrics could only be worn by people connected to royalty. In other words, people in the noble class. You were not allowed to wear those fabrics or those particular colors. I believe like yellow for a long time was a royal color, and because it was hard to get certain types of the yellow dye, and purple was reserved for people who were at the noble, part of the noble court, and other people were not allowed to wear that type of purple. They couldn't use that type of dye. That's a few hundred years back, but it was definitely something that after a while it did not really connect you to real anymore. But people continued to practice because they wanted something to indicate that they were above the common crowd. Um, I'm not exactly sure what the equivalent is today, other than the designer sigils, but I don't think people have ever given up, and I don't think they ever will, that desire to be connected to royalty. And I mean, in some cases, I think it's because they had a past connection to it. In other cases, a desire to be connected to it.
No, for sure. I was also gonna say white. During here in America, white was a color. That's why they use it during marriage, because back then, when the roads weren't paved, and there was a lot of mud involved, like that would be a hard thing to have keep clean. White with the color of white, and that's why you would marry in it. Only like royalty would have.
Really.
Yeah.
What about red as a symbolism for blood and the purity of the blood?
I've never heard of that. I think the only thing I can relate that to is Sparta in Greece.
Really?
Yeah, because they were like wearing burgundy red. Like that's how they rock their colors to show their pride.
Hmm. Okay. Well, um, we're almost out of time. Got about 5 minutes left. Um, a more serious question, I guess, is if people do understand the connection between alchemy and royalty, um, what's your commentary on the catalyst that we have in Grand Trine, where we're trying to, we have the four life variables, money, sex, relationships, and tribe, right? And one of the goals in Grand Trine is get to the highest expression of all four of these things, um, using alchemy. Although we don't really always define it that way, that's pretty much what we're doing. Um,
Uh,
it's like people have a very strong drive to be connected to royalty, but the thing that created royalty in the first place is alchemy, that that raising up of the person so that their blood changes, their vibration changes. What's your comment in terms of people not being so focused on the celebrity part of it, but being equally focused on the alchemy part of it? The thing that made people royal in the first place is not the leather, not the cigars, not the family crest, you know, not the outer things. The things that made them royal was what changed them into higher evolved beings in the first place. What's your comment on that?
my comment on that is that I was never a believer really of it until I started to look into how pharaohs are produced and how they were picked at a certain point in time, where they would have to go through the dark room chamber amidst the pyramids being built, and they would have to raise their own kundalinis before they could be considered uh, labeled a pharaoh. And that's what the snakes, forgive me for the terminology right now, like that's what the snakes would symbolize. When you would see it on the coffins, like the two snakes were basically, they mastered the inner alchemy. And that also traced back to a story right now. I'm trying to remember it for the likes of me, but I don't have the full details. But if you look closely into the story, you can find what I'm talking about. That there was a woman who went to Egypt, and she had a very subconscious longing to go to a certain spot in Egypt to find a temple that was destroyed. And she did a past life regression, and she found out she was actually royalty from that area where they were praising a certain deity, and she saw the temple piece by piece so vividly from the past life regression that they couldn't figure out how to build the temple because of how the to restructure it because of how it was damaged over time. And through her own instructions, they were able to rebuild the temple just based off of her memory of being royalty to the T.
A guy did the same thing with a boat. There was a royal boat that they had, and they unearthed it. but they couldn't figure out because it didn't have like nails and stuff like we know today. It had fasteners, but not the way we know today. They couldn't figure out from the ruins how to put it back together. And this guy from Europe, um, he he had he had a vision of it, and he went down there, you know, and he got there and he was telling them how to do it, and they were like, "How did you, how did you figure this out?" He was saying, "Well, I was there." And they did reconstruct a boat. It's in the museum in Egypt now. so
Wow.
so that's pretty interesting. Okay, we got a call tonight, but this has been a real interesting conversation. We're going to continue it all through this series of royalty and alchemy. Um, if you think of anything else that's really comes up in your mind about this, please let me know. I want to encourage the listeners and the watchers, viewers to put comments and questions there on the YouTube channel and feed us all the things that you're interested in so that we know which direction for the series to go in. I want to give thanks to JR and for his input into this. And again, I want to thank the viewers and say, keep moving forward, keep progressing.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Master Yao, and the viewers.
Good night.
Good night.